Death Aura, LE, our first map.
I don't think many of us do, and that's the beauty of it. We're gonna be starting up here in the top left-hand side of the map, top of the blue. Zerg player, he is Bly.
And his opponent in the bottom left-hand side in the red from Gamer's origin in France, it is Stephano.
All right, so Creighton, I'm gonna throw you under the bus a little bit here.
Please.
Do you know what Bly's team is? And you can look at the clan logo. Okay. God,
yeah.
I get so excited like by the prospect that people don't know it stands for Raise Your Edge, because apparently it just tilts a lot of the players when you call it Rye Gaming. Which
really?
I really like calling it Rye Gaming, because it's literally the initials are RYE, and they're like, what do you think we are? Some kind of bread? It's one of my favorite
You asked the wrong caster that, because I actually organize and cast the Raise Your Edge Gaming
that is true.
Royal tournament every couple months. So that's why one of the worst people you could have asked. But I gotta say, Raise Your Edge clearly paying Bly too much, as he's obviously currently streaming from inside the Fortress of Solitude at the North Pole. Do you see the white background there? It looks like he's just got a sheet of ice behind him that he's playing StarCraft in front of.
Look, man, you gotta cool out. You gotta cool yourself down. You gotta chill out before your matches, and that's how he stays so sharp in these intense, crazy situations he puts himself in. But you know, I do think, like, as much as we will love to talk about Bly and nutty games and proxy hatches and stuff, and yes, he does bust some of those out in ZVZ, absolutely. I actually feel like ZVZ, of all of the matchups that Bly gets to play, probably the one he gets to really be the least weird, because I feel like this is just that matchup where if you are cutting a really big corner, there's a massive window for you to just get punished by your opponent. If you're trying to be really, really overtly aggressive or something, like it's just so much more obvious. Zerg versus Zerg, I feel like you're always trying to keep an eye out on your opponent.
Yeah, you couldn't be more right about that. I know I joked in my intro that maybe Bly would do something crazy, but you're right. CVZ is usually his most standard matchup. And especially against a player like Stephano, who is one of those players who's developed, you know, every player, I always joke that players have like, did you ever collect baseball cards as a kid, Ruby?
No, I was a Pokemon card kid.
Okay, me too. So we can pretend like we like baseball cards and be cool kids. So, you know, back in the day.
You collect baseball cards? Me neither. Baseball sucks. I'm like, oh, that's not where I thought that was going to go.
Well, if you didn't know, on the back of baseball cards, they'll very often have like stats for the players, you know, hitting 5 stars, running 2 stars, whatever. And I feel like Stephano has a really unique set of values in the especially in ZVZ, where he's got this insane like sixth sense about what his opponents are going to be up to, and his scouting. He's just been around the scene for so long. If he sees one Zergling out of place, if he notices one extra drone on gas, he suddenly is able to extrapolate from that a huge amount of information. So if Bly does try something a little insane, Stephano would be one of the first players to catch it. Right now, though, both players opening with relatively reasonable Zerg openers. Stephano with 3 base Roach, and it looks like Bly staying on 2 for now.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bly is the one that is doing something, I mean, as you would kind of expect, a bit cheekier. He's going for the really fast 2-base layer, but he's also adding on the melee upgrade while he gets up the Roach Horn. I am wondering how much he's actually going to end up using that Roach Horn, and if we're going to be seeing something a little bit crazier coming out over here from Bly. If he's taking his extra, okay, he's taking all 4 of his gas guys over here, so I am thinking this is probably going to be a muta play. And the Roach Horn's kind of a little bit of a debate. Kind of, you know, it's a bit of a safety thing, I think, for him, because he makes sure he doesn't just die immediately to something. But no, he's like, okay, you know what? As I say that, he actually ends up getting Roach speed, and he's gonna make just that one Roach. Oh man, what is the? Okay, it is gonna be a Spire.
There it is. Yep. CVZ's in such a weird place right now, Fear Dragon. There are so many players who are favoring these 2-base Ling Bane Muta builds because they're just so powerful when controlled correctly. And Bly, I'm not sure if he's actually going to cancel that Roach speed. Some players will just let it finish just to have it later in the game if they need some effective Roaches out. But Ling Bane Muta, especially in the hands of a player like Bly, who's got insanely good micro and good map awareness, is such a powerful strategy. So Stephano right now is not spotted the Spire, but do you think he suspects something up only seeing those two bases down for Bly?
I mean, he should definitely know something is coming, but I'm almost wondering, like, if these extra 3 or 4 Roaches are just here to sell the story. Because he's like, he sends them straight out underneath the overlords and everything. He's like, oh no, look, my roach. Oh, I tried to move out with my roaches, but I see you're too well defended. Let me return. Maybe I'll try and Nidus you or something. And it's like, I feel like this is all just trying to sell a story right now.
I think you're absolutely correct. Look at it. The Spire almost finished up. And of course, when a Zerg player is finishing up that Spire, you want to start glancing at their mineral and gas count. Ideally, of course, a Zerg player wants to be at about 1,000 once that Spire finishes to crank out 10 mutas. And Bly is going to be darn close. The Spire's down, and immediately the muta button is hit 7, maybe 8 times.
That as soon as those links showed up, I feel like that should have been the moment that Stephano immediately knew what was happening, because he actually has, like you said, those 3 queens starting on up because he saw +1 melee. Like, if you're planning to pump out nonstop roaches and go to that stage of the game, you're not going to have melee. You're going to have missile attack for your roaches, not for your Zerglings. So I feel like Stephano should have a really good idea about this. I would love to see him. It doesn't have to be like in this exact moment, but pretty soon should be thinking about getting up some spores if he identifies this appropriately. Okay, yeah, he's starting up a spore.
Phew. Yeah, I mean, you have a couple options as a Zerg player when you're getting 2 base mutas. Obviously, first and foremost, you're gonna get those overlords home, but you can just try and win the ground game with mass roaches, or you can counter Spire it up. And it does look like Stephano's gonna try and win that ground game with roaches right now. He's working on +1 missile attack for the roaches. Already has +1 carapace finished up, which will buy him a little bit more time from those mutalisks in the middle of the map. But he's pushing across with a fair number of roaches. But I think Bly's gonna be in decent shape as his mutas are starting to pick him down little by little.
Yeah, I think the Bly's gonna need some more of these links to get involved in this. They deal +1 melee, so they'll do more damage, but these roaches getting into the middle line. Remember, the mutas will eventually clean up all of this, so this will just be more of a time buying mechanism for Stephano. He wants to trade out as best he can, and he's not finding any drones over the 3rd base. I guess the bright side, the optimistic viewpoint of that is there are no drones at the 3rd base, so it's definitely not exactly how Stephano envisioned probably these roaches to trade out, but again, it's buys him time back at home. He can get up some responses, and look at that, 5 spore cars getting added on. I think he really is really respecting those.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to respect the Mutalisks, right? Not just from Bly, but from any Zerg player. They're just such a versatile unit here, and players these days have such incredible control that even 8, 9, 10 Mutalisks is enough to 1 versus 1 that Spore Crawler. Nice transfuse from Stephano to save it, but Bly almost picking it down, and probably can't snipe some of these queens if they get too far away from their buddies.
There's a lot of transfuses available. I don't know. Okay, well, he's going to be able to get one of them. I think maybe just barely locking the energy for transfuse. But again, it's now about the fact that the Hydras are going to be popping on out. So Bly is doing, honestly, what Bly loves to do, which is he just holds down the T key and just pumps out muta after muta after muta. And then finally, when he's out of like gas, he'll just throw the rest of his resources into those Zerglings. So that's going to be the name of the game here. And it's going to be about Stephano getting up enough defenses at home that he feels like he can safely push out with a Hydra attack. And it's going to be very, very important that he's also prepared for Banelings, because that is a very natural transition for the muta player.
And as you say it, Bly immediately throwing down that centripetal hooks upgrade to give those Banelings even more speed, making them scary both on and off of creep. Which obviously is going to, if there's an engagement in the middle of the map here, those Banelings going to be very, very effective up against the Speedlings of Stephano. Now, behind this, I will point out, Bly already has that 4th base, not just on the way, but finished. For the last 5 minutes of the game, Stephano's been ahead on workers, and considerably so for a while. But now Bly, with all these Banelings, even has economy behind us. This is dangerous for your Dragon. It was dangerous for your Dragon.
Why did Bly move in like 25 seconds before his Baneling speed finishes up? Like, there's literally no world that Stephano should be taking those hits while he has his Hydras on creep to micro back. Like that, oh my God, Bly, like that actually could have been a sick attack, and he just hit 20 seconds early.
I'm not sure if that was just a mistake or what on earth, if he thought there might have been some pressure coming out from Stephano or something. But yeah, of the 12 Banelings that went in there, 0 of them really got a good connection off. Stephano, I believe, has yet to lose more than 1 Hydra. He's only lost 1 Hydra this game. And now he's got a fairly significant number of them on the map, 24 Hydralisks here. And as Group Spines is finished up and Muscular Augments, they're so scary.
Yeah, and with Pathogen Glands on the way for those Infestors, remember that how committed Bly is to making this Mutaball work. If he gets caught with a fungal, it's not necessarily as much even so about the damage that the fungal does anymore. It's really just about slowing them down, allowing the Hydra Ball or the Queen Ball to just catch up with them and take them out. And actually, same thing even goes for the Banelings. You get a fungal growth down on those Banelings, suddenly they're all slowed down, and they just get annihilated by the Roaches and the Hydras.
Wow, the Banelings rolling in here, finally on creep with speed, but the control from Bly, not the best we've ever seen. Decent splitting from Stephano to spread those Hydras out, and again, for the second time this game, we're going to see Bly really committing a lot of Banes to an attack that simply doesn't do the crippling damage that Banes are designed to do in a CVZ.
Well, a little bit of nice damage there from Bly, but he doesn't even end up getting the gas geyser. The Spore Caller is just going to get rebuilt, and like I was saying, it's the Infestors. The Infestors are going to start popping on out. There's already 2 out right now, and yes, Stephano has been kept back on 3 bases. That is actually a pretty decent, decently big deal here. But I'm not sure that Stephano is going to be able to win a head-on fight if the whole army is there. And that is the big scary thing, is that he has to be able to defend against a big counterattack. So there's still a good opportunity here for Bly to take this, but he still has to figure out a way to deal with the army.
Yeah, you spoke about bases just a moment ago. I wanted to get your thoughts, Ravi. Bly has taken the inside 2 o'clock base here. What an interesting location. Of course, normally Zerg players more content to take the 5th base at the 12 o'clock position there on the north side of the map. What do you think Bly is doing there, grabbing that inside base? Is it just so he can have a little bit more forward vision?
It might be a little bit of that, honestly. Oh, hold that thought. We do have some Banelings rolling on in from behind. Looking for connections on the Hydras. There's actually no room to move back. And even though there's a lot of red here, there's barely any Hydras. So suddenly now the Mutas are going to be able to start going ham on those Roaches, shutting down the 4th base. This was actually such a critical moment there for Bly. Being able to connect those Banelings on the Hydras was massive. A nice flanking maneuver there. To address your question really quickly, Creighton, I actually think that part of it may just be that if Stephano moves his army over to the top right-hand side, it takes a lot longer to move to the next base. So he can't just do 1 base down, 2 base down, 3 base down, chain really quickly. Okay. He has to go from the top, that 4th base location in the top left, and he has to move all the way over to the natural in the 3rd, and then it's a long way off to another base. So it's kind of just spreading yourself out against a less mobile army, I think.
Okay, very smart play then from Bly. I wondered what that was all about, but it seems to work. Now, Stephano's transitioning yet again into Lurker play, and Lurkers has been seen a ton here in DreamHack Fall. Now, Lurkers, I don't know if you know this, Spear Dragon, but the amount of damage that Lurkers do against Mutalisks is not very high.
It's negligible, yeah. 0 damage is pretty negligible, Creighton. I agree with you.
I'm not a math guy, but I trust your analysis on that one. Oh man, a fungal on the Baneling.
Oh, yeah.
Slow him down, and that's gonna, oh my god, beautiful work there by Stephano to fungal those Banelings down. Again, stopping another Baneling run by.
Oh,
but,
fungal means beautiful.
Just barely misses it. Only 2 Mutalisks go down, but the Mutalisk count's still going to be at 31 from Bly, and there's just so much pressure from Stephano. At some point, Bly has just got to run him over with the economy. I mean, look at those blue arrows on the bottom side of the map, showing that Bly is significantly ahead in both mineral and gas production this game.
Yeah, it's going to become very, very tough right now for Stephano to turn this around. But there is one final saving grace here, right? He's consistently been having his 4th base and stuff shut down. He has his Hive Tech out now. So he needs to get up some Vipers ASAP. I'm actually a little bit worried that he's not immediately starting those up, because if he needs to just have an answer to the Mutas, he needs to be able to immediately parasitic bomb them down, do that AoE splash damage, give the Hydras and the Roaches the opportunity to deal with those Banelings, and then be able to move across the map. Because the longer he waits, Ultra Cavern's finished up. There's all these other things that are getting ready. And here come the Banelings moving on in, but Fungal should be able to shut them down for a bit.
A bit of a missed fungal there from Stephano, who only caught about the left flank of those Banelings, maybe 3 or 4. And my god, again, that's a kill, not a cancel on that 4th base. That's the 2nd time this game that 4th base has been killed, and the 4th total time it's been denied from going up. At this point, Bly is just choking Stephano out. I don't even think he needs to land a killing blow anymore. I think he can just keep putting this light pressure on either side and just kind of waiting for Stephano to fold like a deck of cards.
I agree with you. The 4th base getting shut down way too many times. At this point, Stephano, he kind of feels like he's all in. I honestly wouldn't even hate that much just to move out at this point, except that this is going to basically turn into a base trade and rely on the Vipers plus the Fungals. But I understand why that's not exactly a comforting area when you're going up against a 5-base Zerg player and you're trying to base trade it. Yeah, it's not really a comfortable place.
Still not a single Viper out from Stephano, which, as you said, just a huge mistake. Oh my god, these +2 Banelings doing gorgeous work. That's 9, 10 more drones down for Stephano. Stephano now losing a total of 28 drones this game. That's insane. He's lost as many drones as he has lost Zerglings this game, Fear Dragon.
That's brutal, man. This is like the slow and painful death right now. Stephano in game 1 at this point. I'm convinced the reason why Stephano's still in this is because he is just preying on the massive fungal plus parasitic bomb combo. Sure. But we're actually at the point where Bly has so big of a bank and so many bases here that it actually won't matter. If he lost, let me put this in perspective. If he lost all 25 mutas in one single go without killing a single unit, Bly actually has enough resources to basically replenish all of those. And he doesn't even have to go into that. He can just make Banelings and be fine.
Oh, man, that hatchery with 13 health. I was hoping one of the Banelings would get on top of it and destroy it. But the Ultras are here, and they have got free hug t-shirts on. That's right, everyone getting Ultralisk hugs now. Finally, the third base for Stephano goes down, and he's now a 2-base Zerg player at 16 minutes in. Wow, this is a tough one here. Stephano with no bank, with no real tech. This is bungle.
Yeah, moral victory here is killing off those mutas, but again, like the mutas have already done everything that they need to. They've shut down that 4th base so many times. It is going to be just the fact that there are going to be a ton of Ultras and Banelings pairing together, I feel like. And as long as those Banelings can get even somewhat okay connection with those Hydras, it's going to be really, really tough for Bly to give up this game.
We'll get really excited here because Fear Dragon, the 4th base for Stephano, well, now it's the 3rd base, has just finished. So finally, at 17 minutes in, Stephano has taken that base at the inside 4 o'clock position. Well done from our French Zerg player. Go on.
I'm waiting to see if he can even get a chance to mine like 600 resources from it.
Only one spore in the main here. Wow, the Mutalisk actually played a little safer than I thought. I kind of thought Bly would just dive on top of that. Stephano obviously would have to rotate from his 4th base up to his main to defend against that. But here's the real pressure from Bly. Ultralisks, Banelings. Is this the final fight of the game, Fear Dragon?
Could very well be. Those parasitic bombs coming out from Bly are going to completely shut down a lot of the Lurker DPS. Banelings connecting on the Investors, believe it or not, but even with the Lurkers actually doing so much damage to the Ultras, it doesn't matter. Bly is going to take game number 1.
That was so convincing. Death by 1,000 paper cuts.
I'm not going to lie, Creighton. I actually thought the Bly was just not going to be able to recover after the flubbed Baneling attack, like 20 seconds before Baneling speed finished. But he was able to continuously shut down that 4th base and just actually do a great job of, you were talking about the Mutalisk play and the control there, keeping Stephano at home. Stephano never moved out. Like, let's be realistic about that. He had the one Roach attack that didn't go that well, and then he just never moved out again.
Nope. Completely unable to leave his base, and that's one of the beauties of that Ling Bane Muta style. Is it's not just that you have a lot of control with your units and they're very high damage units, but it's that you have complete control of the map as well. Unless your opponent goes for a counter spire and tries to fight you Muta on Muta, you have complete control of the map, and moving out is terrifying because, of course, in a ZVZ you're not spreading creep, so it's slow roaches, slow roaches, and nothing really else to control the map. Bly just in a huge advantage here. Game 2, Pillars of Gold. Any predictions for us?
Oh man, I mean, if Bly is able to take it to that kind of game again, which I actually wouldn't even be surprised if he just tried to go for that sort of Muta Ling Bane style again and make it work. I actually think that Bly might end up doing this, turning this into a 2-0, but it's tough. Like, I'm trying to think of the stuff that Stephano I feel like should have done, and I gotta trust Stephano to some point. Like, he's a much smarter player than me. Like, that's very realistic. This guy is really good at StarCraft, but I really do feel like going and just trying to invest heavily into getting up that Lurker tech before worrying about getting up high, before worrying about getting up Vipers to deal with such a massive Mutaclad. I feel like that's the reason why he never got up to 4th base. It wasn't the Banelings that were just annihilating his Hydras super early on that was preventing things. It was actually just the Mutas. The Mutas were continuously shutting everything down and keeping him pinned back. I actually feel like with a proper wall, he could have dealt with the Banelings and just getting up the Vipers a little bit faster. He would have had a better shot there, but, you know, Stephano obviously going to go with whatever his experience has told him, and we'll see if he can make that experience turning into a victory here in game 2.
you know, it seems a bit counterproductive or counterintuitive, but sometimes lurkers can be a decent response to Ling Bane Muta. They have incredibly high DPS on the ground, and it takes so long for Mutalisks to kill them. You gotta have the Overseers in place. You can't, and then of course the Overseers are in danger of getting shot down by the Hydras. So sometimes that can be a really nice transition, but without something to directly deal with those Mutalisks, yeah, Stephano unable to dig himself out of that hole. So
yeah,
let's see. So game 2 here going to be on Pillars of Gold, which I love seeing ZVZ on Pillars of Gold. It's one of those maps that has some really nice open areas in the middle of the map that makes it really exciting for these engagements to happen. I wouldn't be surprised to see some Ling Bane wars between these two players in this game. Always a possibility, but especially on Pillars of Gold, where you've got that open space to maneuver. And these are definitely two players who feel like they have like high technical perspicacity with those Lings and Banelings, where they're able to do those incredible surrounds and micro. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that, but I think the field wide open right now, both these very creative players.
Yeah, and I think it's entirely possible we see something like that. Like the other thing we could also see is like a 12-pool drone pull, because I feel like it never just seems to go out of style. And Pillars of Gold is definitely a map I've seen it on a decent number of times as well. So yeah, I'm with you. And actually, to really quickly touch upon the lurker point, like you're right, absolutely. Like lurkers can be really useful against the Banelings, because the idea is the Banelings are going to go and suicide bomb in on the Hydras anyways, right? Like they're expecting to die. So you have to have enough DPS to kill all of the Banelings before they make it to your big Hydra clump. So like that's the purpose the lurkers are serving, is killing the Banelings before they get to your Hydras. And doing that big line splash damage and everything is like great. It's just about the fact that like the mutas were causing a lot more problems, and I feel like there's other ways you can slow things down. Like I actually really liked the evolution chamber wall that Stephano had over at his third base location, because that evolution chamber wall slowed down the Banelings. It lined them up actually for the lurkers as well later on when we saw some attacks. And even like the slow Baneling attack that came in, they're all getting choked up. Like it becomes a lot more difficult to get that big Baneling clump into the core of the Hydras. So I actually like those kinds of solutions there. Again, like I'm actually not entirely sure that we're not just going to see like a 12-pool drone pull or something here.
You gotta have a couple cheesy games in here just to keep the hype levels adequately high. One thing that I'm so excited to see in the last game, as you've sort of been talking about, is that you have all these options to respond. One thing Stephano didn't do very well in that game that we're gonna have to see him do very well in the next game, if we see anything similar, is that Zerg players especially have this really delicate tightrope balancing that they're doing, where they can't build too many Lings, but they can't build too many Banelings, but they can't build too many Hydras. Like to figure out what the right composition is as far as what'll fight against the opponent's army. Stephano just misjudging a little bit there and going for more lurkers than he needed. So something to keep our eyes on here in game 2 is, can Stephano respond to his opponent's build? But it does look like finally, after Bly had to shut down his something or other,
yeah,
looks like he's finally ready to go here.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting started in game number 2 for Pillars of Gold. The game will load on up in a second. Remember that this is going to be one of those matches that will be a bit telling, because you were talking about this before, but there are like a decent number of Zerg players in this group, and like half of the group is basically Zergs.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Being able to show up in ZVZ, kind of an important thing for these players, especially when the other Zerg players you got to play are players like Lambo and Raynor. Like you need to have on-point ZVZ.
It's the same problem we ran into in our previous group D, which has 5 Terrans in it. And Marine Lord's TVT looked so good. And I was like, man, this bodes well for him later in the match, because he's got 3 other Terrans to destroy. So, and of course, one other thing to keep an eye on here is Stephano currently tied for first place in this group with a 2-0 match score. Going up to 3-0 this early takes a lot of pressure off later in the series.
Yeah, could definitely be a nice start for him. But I think we're getting started with game number 2 here. We're going to be starting down in the bottom left-hand side of the map. Probably the red Zerg player. He is Gamers Origin Stephano.
And his opponent in the top right-hand side in the blue. He is currently on fire. It's Raise Your Edge Gaming's Bly. All right, so Fear Dragon, how long have you been around the North American scene? Give or take.
StarCraft 2 beta?
Perfect. So can you explain to me and everybody out there who may be a bit confused? We've seen On Fire appended after certain players at various points. Neeb, Scarlet, now Bly. Fear Dragon, what's that all about?
Okay, so it originally started as a meme with Bly on fire. Like, Bly on fire was actually the original thing. I think it actually started, if I recall correctly, someone can correct me on Twitter or in the chat or something, but
sure.
I think it started at a Home Story Cup. I don't remember the exact game and everything, but Bly was playing on fire. So it became like the running thing, Bly on fire, Bly on fire. And he ended up changing his name to it. And then I think that there was some other event, or maybe it was just when the Bly went to like Korea or something. Basically, Neeb, Scarlet, and No Regret, who are all the, you know, the 3 Korea house people that were there for a while in like 2016 era or so.
Right.
I guess it was like 2016, 2017, but all 3 of them basically ended up changing their Twitter handles to have on fire in it. So I think it was sort of just memeing on after Bly, but yeah, I guess they all stuck with the name for the most part, except for No Regret. No Regret changed his name, so I mean, he's not really on fire anymore.
He's back in Canada now, having otters climb onto his kayak and being a magical Disney princess.
Is that what happens in Canada?
Did you hear about that story?
Climbed on a
man.
Oh, was this on the Pylon show?
It was. No Regrets back home in Canada, and we were like, oh, how are things in Canada? And we expected to be like, oh, it's good. I'm practicing StarCraft, or I'm running the team house. And he said, I went kayaking the other day, and an otter climbed up on my kayak, and I got to pet him.
Oh, you know, I actually did. I saw that he had an Instagram story for that. Yeah,
it's the most adorable story I've ever heard. I loved it.
Yeah, No Regret living his best life right now. As I mention it because, you know, Bly is also quite a cheesy, cheeky Zerg and everything. But I feel like Bly is kind of holding down the fort on cheesy, cheeky Zergs for a little bit, since No Regret has got a lot of other stuff he's been doing. That's not just playing StarCraft.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. I love this. Look, Bly still on 2 bases, but it looks like that drone, I thought was maybe going for a 3rd instead, going for the Evo chamber. Bly sticking on 2 bases, early lair, and you know, Fear Dragon, you said it just before the broadcast, or just before the match started. Wouldn't be surprised to see Bly going for something similar here in Game 2 that he did in Game 1. What does he need to do better this time that he wasn't, or pardon me, what does he need to do the same this time? And what does Stephano need to do better to defend against it?
Well, I already talked a lot about what I think Stephano could maybe do. Like, obviously the Roach attack that he initially didn't work out super duper well when you just don't really get any drone kills or anything. You kill a few lings and I guess buy a bit of time. But I think that Bly is so good at going for these meta plays. He actually loves going for the meta plays. But remember, it actually started off very similar to this game where he got up the Roach horn. He sold a story to Stephano, right? He made 4 Roaches. He made Stephano believe that this was probably not going to be necessarily just like a big Immuta play, which I actually say Bly is pretty well known for. So I feel like Stephano should be able to prepare a little bit better. Stephano can handle this a few different ways. Like, remember, he has his own 3rd base that's going to be coming up with a fast, or sorry, not as fast of a layer, but he's going to have more gas. Like, one option, if you really feel comfortable with it, it's a bit scary to do, but you can get a later Spire and just rely on better gas income a bit earlier on and overpower your opponent with mutas.
Interesting. That'd be a really interesting way to approach this matchup. We do see the Spire going down for Bly here, and like you said, a Spire even a little bit later from Stephano can still be a decent counter to this play. But of course, the longer that clock ticks for Bly's Spire coming up, the more dangerous it does get for Stephano, who, if we check his vision, I don't believe has scouted anything on Bly's side of the map, has not been able to make it in here, doesn't know about the Spire. Might not even know about that lair tech, doesn't know about that lair tech in the main base. So Stephano missing a lot of information here. He's trying to piece together the puzzle pieces, and he seems to have stumbled upon the right solution. Look at that. Counter Spire down already. It's Stephano's natural, I believe.
Yeah, I was going to say, he actually also decided to go for +1 armor as well. So +1 armor is usually like an early or mid-game thing if you're in like a normal Roach versus Roach ZVZ, because it does reduce the damage output of your opponent's lings, or it reduces the damage output of your opponent's Roaches by a little bit. But as the game goes on and upgrades scale, like usually the armor upgrades are not super duper on point unless you're just up against lings or mutas. So I actually think this is just a really good indication that Stephano knows what he's going to be up against. He knows that Bly loves his Spire play. All of Europe knows that Bly loves going for the Spire play in ZVZ. So I think that he's got a really good read on this, and it's just going to be a bet about the execution of everything. Because again, like, look at this. Stephano's going to be able to shut down a 3rd base. Remember, he got his 3rd base up a lot earlier. As long as he can defend against this Link Flood from Bly, and look at that. Yes, he'll lose some queens. He might even lose some drones here. but he should have enough roaches to clean this up. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Creighton?
Yeah, no, question mark for sure, Fear Dragon. I'm a bit concerned. These Lings doing a really nice job on the roaches, and most importantly, look at the Mutalisk count right now. 6 already out for Bly, 4 more on the way, a total of 10, and Stephano only has 3 Corruptors coming out. First Spore Crawler going down right now. Bly is going to send these Mutalisks right across the map. Here they come. Somebody queue up right in the Valkyries, because Bly is going to strike at either the third base or the natural of Stephano and continue to clean up drones here. Bly now, even on workers, he's redropped his third base now, and if he can keep his pressure on Stephano for a while, or catch some of these Corruptors out one by one, this is going to be a really nice pressure out of Bly.
Okay, well, yeah, the Corruptors are going to be an interesting choice. This has actually been, it's so funny because, you know, Europeans, not going to lie, a little bit snooty about their play. They look down at the other regions like, but you're not as good as Europe. You know who actually first did this kind of Corruptor play style, like in larger stages and everything? It's actually a lot of the Chinese scene. The Chinese scene was going Corruptor versus Muta in some really, really fun games in like 2018 Challenger. So it's really cool to see. We'll see how well it actually pans out over here. He is able to finally push things back, and remember, he still does have a much faster third base. So Stephano, he has enough Corruptors now to push back the Mutas.
Yeah, I think he does. There was that very scary moment when there are only about 3 Corruptors on the map and they were popping out one by one, but Bly's actually going to get caught here. I'm amazed he's taking this fight. This is a very bold fight for Bly to take. Looks like a focus fire from Stephano. Not very good, though, here, and Bly is focus firing down these Corruptors one by one. This is the sort of micro mistake that Stephano simply can't afford to make. Look at these Corruptors falling like pinatas, one by one by one. These Mutalisks getting great trades here, and even if Bly loses all these Mutalisks, he can remax on Lings because there's still a lot of dead supply in those Corruptors. Remember, guys, Corruptors can't really do anything in a ZVZ unless, God forbid, you have to go Brood Lords at the 20-minute mark. So every Corruptor that Stephano makes is only good for taking down a Mutalisk of Bly's and maybe a Caustic Spray later in the game.
Yeah, it's really important that Stephano is able to get up that +1 armor upgrade for the air units, but he's also got to make sure he's not taking too much damage from these Ling counterattacks. Like, that is the big thing, is that you're supposed to make Corruptors, but you also need to make the Roaches or some ground units actually deal with these Ling counterattacks. And Bly is just finding all these opportunities. Now the Corruptors are in high enough numbers to push back the Mutas, but the Corruptors aren't going to be at all useful for dealing with the Lings.
Not at all. And you know what's even worse for Stephano right now is that while Bly's sort of winning the ground game, right? These Lings being hyper annoying, forcing a couple extra Roaches out that Stephano simply doesn't want to build. But if you take a look at the units lost tab here very quickly, you'll see, look at the number of Mutalisks lost, the number of Corruptors lost. It's dead even, and that should not ever happen to your Dragon. With +1 air armor or air carapace for Stephano and no flyer upgrades for Bly, Mutalisks should lose this Corruptor fight 7 days a week and twice on Sundays. But with better focus fire, Bly is able to take an advantage even in the air.
Yeah, I almost actually am starting to wonder, like, what do you do here as Stephano? You have to have these Corruptors at home, and you're going to see he's going to move out with the Corruptors, but the Mutaflock is actually too large, and you don't invest in a lot of Spore Crawlers when you have that big Corruptor defense. So you have to return home. The Corruptors immediately realizing, oh no, we're out in the middle of the map. We just lost a Gas Geyser. We lost a drone or two over here. Bly is just taking a 4th base. Like, this is actually really, really well done by Bly. This is a great reaction.
Yeah, this game is a stark reminder that one of the additional resources that StarCraft players don't often think about. You know, we think about supply, we think about minerals, we think about gas, but very often we don't think about our army value as a resource in and of itself. And if your army value isn't doing anything on the map, if it's just going back and forth, trying to defend various locations but not doing any damage, then it's a waste. It's a complete waste of that resource. And right now, Stephano is not making the most of his army value, losing more and more Corruptors. Again, poor focus firing from Stephano. He's trying to make more Corruptors to get out of this, but the second that Bly does a big Ling Flood, I think this game could just be pretty quickly over, Fear Dragon.
Yeah, I think this is a really, he's almost basically a corpse at this point. Like, this is a really tough spot. I mean, I think he agrees. GG.